The sun was already high when Reese Faulkner pulled onto the interstate, the kind of pale Texas sun that promised heat without mercy by noon. Harper Bell sat in the passenger seat with her feet on the dashboard, oversized sunglasses pushing back her hair, a half-empty iced coffee sweating rings on the center console between them. "Window or aisle?" Harper asked, not looking up from her phone. "What?" "At the spa. When we get the couples massage, window or aisle for you?" Reese glanced over. Harper had her bottom lip caught between her teeth, scrolling. The blue light of the screen caught the edge of her jaw in a way that made her look very young and very comfortable, like she had no idea the world had edges. "Harper, we're not getting a couples massage. It's a solo spa weekend. For me. After everything." Harper looked up then, smiled. "I know. I'm coming for the hiking and the food. The massage was a joke." But Reese had been the one to book 2 rooms. Reese had been the one to insist on separate cars to Santa Fe. Reese had been the one to say, 2 weeks ago, standing in her own kitchen with the remains of a dinner neither of them ate, "I need space, Harper. I need time. But I still want to do this trip." Harper had said yes. Of course she had said yes. They were best friends. Had been since freshman orientation at UT Austin, 8 years ago. Had survived 3 apartments, 1 eviction scare, 1 terrible breakup each, 2 semesters when Reese almost dropped out, and 1 night in Sedona 2 years ago when Harper got lost on a night hike and Reese found her crying behind a rock formation at 2 a.m. They had seen each other at their worst and stayed. Reese thought that meant something. The highway stretched ahead, 2 lanes of gray cutting through scrubland and distant mesas. Reese set the cruise at 75 and let her hands rest on the wheel. Country music murmured from the radio, something twangy and half familiar. Harper was her phone. Reese watched the road and tried to remember the last time she had felt safe in a car with her best friend. She couldn't. They stopped at a gas station outside of Marfa, a cluster of pumps and a convenience store with a hand-painted sign advertising cold beer and Apache brand snacks. Harper went inside for snacks. Reese stayed behind to pump gas and stand in the thin strip of shade cast by the awning, watching the heat rise off the asphalt in waves. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost didn't read it, but something about the preview text, visible on the locked screen, made her reach for it. "Hey, this is Dane's sister. You should know Harper's been seeing him again. She told him not to contact you, but I thought you should know. I'm sorry." Reese read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. Dane. Her Dane. Her fiancé of 3 years, the man she'd canceled the wedding for 8 months ago, the man whose ring she still couldn't bring herself to return because every time she held the box, she felt something crack behind her ribs. Dane. Whom Harper had sworn, on the night Reese confronted her, had been a one-time mistake. A moment of weakness. Too much tequila and not enough judgment. Harper had cried for 2 hours. Reese had held her. Reese had said it wasn't her fault because Harper was drunk, and Dane should have known better. Reese had protected Harper, and Harper had let her. Now Reese stood in the Texas heat beside a gas pump and felt the ground tilt slightly beneath her. Harper came out of the store with a bag of chips and a second iced coffee. She was talking before she reached the car, something about the cashier asking if they were sisters. Did they look like sisters? She slid into the passenger seat and clicked the seatbelt and looked at Reese with a smile that was bright and easy and had never, Reese realized now, been anything but practiced. "Reese, you okay?" Reese looked at her. "Yeah," she said, "just hot. Let's go." The road to Santa Fe unwound through landscape that grew stranger the further west they drove. The scrubland gave way to red rock formations that rose out of the earth like broken teeth. The sky turned a blue so deep it looked painted. Reese drove and said nothing. Harper talked about the hiking trail she'd found online, a 5-mile loop with views of something called Cathedral Rock, and how she'd packed her good trail shoes and maybe they could do it first thing tomorrow morning before the heat got bad. The gas station text sat in Reese's pocket like a stone. She kept the window up and the AC on full and told herself she was being ridiculous. She had no proof. A text from an unknown number. Dane's sister. She didn't even know Dane had a sister. She had met his mother once, at a dinner that ended badly, and his father was a name in a birthday card. It could be anyone. It could be fake. It could be some elaborate prank or misunderstanding, or Harper had been sleeping with Dane for months. maybe years. Maybe the night Reese had food poisoning and slept on her bathroom floor while Dane ran to the store for Gatorade and was gone for 45 minutes. Maybe every time he was vague about where he'd been or smelled faintly of something that wasn't his soap. Maybe the reason Reese had felt, for the last 2 years, a low-grade hum of wrongness in her own life without being able to name it. Harper had taken something from her. Not just Dane, not just the wedding. Something in the center of Reese's chest that she couldn't name but could feel the shape of, like a missing tooth, a gap the tongue kept finding. The sun was setting by the time they crossed into New Mexico. The mesas went amber, then copper, then a deep bruised red. Harper had fallen asleep somewhere around Truth or Consequences, her head tilted against the window, one hand still loosely holding her phone. Reese looked at the phone. It was lying in Harper's lap, screen dark, the case worn soft at the corners from years of holding. Reese had seen that phone 1,000 times, had handed it to Harper at concerts so she could take photos, had watched Harper scroll through Instagram with her at 11 p.m. on the couch, both of them half asleep under a shared blanket. The passcode was Reese's birthday. It had always been Reese's birthday. Harper had changed it to that on a road trip 2 years ago, claiming she could never remember her own, and Reese had thought it was sweet. She reached over. She typed in her birthday. The phone unlocked. Harper didn't stir. The messages were in a thread labeled with a heart emoji. Just a first name, Dane. No photo. No indication that this person had been for 3 years the most important relationship in Reese's life. The first message was from 8 months ago, 3 days after the canceled wedding. I can't stop thinking about you. Harper's reply, you weren't supposed to text this number again. Come to the Marriott on 5th, room 412. Reese scrolled. Hundreds of messages, photos, a video from a fitting room, a reply from Dane. You'll look better out of it. The last message was from 2 weeks ago. I'm going on the road with Reese next week. Then don't. I have to. She's barely been leaving the house. I miss you. I miss you too, but I love her more. Reese read that sentence 3 times. Her hands were shaking. She loved Reese more. He missed Harper, but he loved Reese more. And he was at the Marriott on 5th, room 412, 3 days after Reese canceled the wedding, and Harper went, and then Harper kept going for 8 months, and Reese's best friend was in her apartment every other week, eating dinner across from her table while Reese cried about the man Harper was sleeping with behind her back. The car drifted slightly. Reese realized her hands had gone white-knuckled on the wheel. She pulled onto the shoulder. Gravel crunched under the tires. She put the car in park and sat there, hands in her lap, breathing. The sunset was finished. The sky was purple-gray, the last light bleeding out of the west. Headlights from passing trucks swept across the interior in slow arcs. Harper stirred. Reese? What? Why are we stopped? Reese turned to look at her. Harper's hair was creased from the window. Her eyes were still half asleep, soft and unguarded. She looked, in that moment, exactly like the girl who had found Reese crying in a dorm hallway 8 years ago and sat down beside her and said nothing until Reese was ready to talk. She looked like the person Reese had trusted more than anyone alive. What did you do to me? Harper's face changed. The softness closed like a curtain. What? Reese held up the phone. Harper looked at it, looked at Reese, looked back at the phone. In the silence, Reese could hear the tick of the cooling engine and the distant hum of trucks on the interstate. Reese, let me explain. Explain what? Reese's voice was very steady. She was distantly surprised by that. Explain that you were with him while I was crying on your shoulder about how I couldn't trust anyone? Explain that you were texting him from my apartment while I was making you dinner? Explain that you told him you loved me more while you were, what, protecting me? Was that what that was, Harper? Protection? Harper's mouth opened and closed. He came on to me. The message says you went to his hotel. The message says you sent him photos. The message says you told him you couldn't stop. You went through my phone. You gave me no choice. Harper's jaw tightened. The change was subtle, a shift in the angle, a hardening beneath the skin. But Reese had known this face for 8 years, and she recognized the exact moment her best friend decided to stop being sorry and start being defensive. You want to know what I did? Harper said. Fine. I was with Dane. For a while. I should have told you. But you were so destroyed, Reese. You could barely get out of bed. And he was there, and I was there, and it happened. And then it kept happening because neither of us knew how to stop. But I would never actually hurt you. I chose you, Reese. I always chose you. You chose me while you were sleeping with my fiancé. Choose. I choose you. Present tense. Right now in this car, I am choosing you. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you didn't do it. I can't say that. Then there's nothing to say. Reese turned the key in the ignition. The engine caught. Harper grabbed the door handle. Reese, don't do this. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's dark. Let's talk about this like adults. We're not in the middle of nowhere. There's a town 15 miles back. You can get an Uber. I'm not leaving you on the side of the road. You're not leaving me. I'm leaving you. This trip is over. Harper's hand shot out and grabbed Reese's wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to stop. Don't, Harper said. Her voice had changed, lower. The softness was gone entirely. Don't do this. You don't understand what it'll do to me if you leave me out here. Reese looked at her hand, looked at her face. What it'll do to you? I'm serious, Reese, please. What do you think it did to me? 8 months? 8 months of looking at you and thinking I was losing my mind because something felt wrong and I couldn't find it? You let me believe I was crazy. You let me blame myself. You didn't mean what? You didn't mean to destroy my life? Harper, I canceled my wedding. I lost my apartment because I couldn't afford it alone. I haven't spoken to my mother in 4 months because she keeps asking when I'll find someone, and I can't even. Reese's voice broke. She hadn't expected that. The grief came from somewhere beneath her ribs and expanded outward, filling her throat and her eyes and the spaces between her words. Harper let go of her wrist. She sat back in the seat. She looked out the window at the dark scrubland and the distant shapes of mesas barely visible against the night sky. I'm sorry, she said quietly. That doesn't fix it. I know. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Reese took the highway exit for Santa Fe and found a motel near the interstate, a low stucco building with a flickering vacancy sign and a parking lot lit by a single yellow floodlight. She pulled up outside the office and put the car in park. Get your bag, Reese said. I'll call you an Uber. Harper didn't move. Reese, get your bag. I don't want to go to a motel alone. Not out here. Please, just let me get the room next to yours. We'll talk in the morning, when we've both slept. When this isn't so, I'm not doing that. I'm asking you, one night, please. Reese turned off the engine. She sat with her hands on the wheel and looked at the dashboard, at the faint glow of the clock reading 9:47 p.m. At the same time, Maria Castellanos had ordered coffee at a Denny's on Flagler Street in a story Reese had never heard but somehow carried in her bones. She was so tired. She had been tired for 8 months. She was tired of being angry and tired of being sad and tired of carrying the shape of something she couldn't name. One night, Reese said. One night and then you leave, and I never want to see you again. Harper nodded. She got out of the car and pulled her roller bag from the trunk. She didn't say thank you. Reese didn't expect her to. The motel room smelled like industrial cleaner and old cigarette smoke. Reese threw her bag on the bed, locked the deadbolt, and stood at the window watching Harper's silhouette move behind the curtain in the room next door. A light came on, then went off, then on again. Reese sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her palms into her eyes. She thought about calling the police. She thought about texting Dane's sister. She thought about going home and packing Harper's things and leaving them on the curb. She thought about the night in Sedona 2 years ago when she had found Harper crying on a rock at 2 a.m. and sat beside her in the dark and stayed until sunrise. She wondered what Harper had been crying about that night. Her phone buzzed, a text from Harper. I'm sorry, I know that's not enough. I was going to tell you. I was always going to tell you. I just couldn't figure out how. Reese stared at the screen. The cursor blinked in the reply field. She didn't respond. She didn't sleep. She lay on top of the covers with the AC blasting and listened to the trucks on the interstate and the wind pushing against the window and her own heartbeat in her ears. At some point after 2 a.m., she heard Harper's door open and close, footsteps in the parking lot, an engine start, Headlights swept across her wall and then disappeared. Harper was gone. Reese got up and looked out the window. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted pickup truck she didn't recognize. The road beyond was dark. The floodlight flickered twice and went still. She should have felt relieved. She should have felt free. Instead, she felt something cold settle in the center of her chest, a weight that pressed down on her lungs and made each breath shallow and deliberate. She went back to bed. She didn't sleep. Morning came gray and cold, a sudden shift from the heat of the day before. Reese showered in the motel bathroom with its mildewed grout and single-serving shampoo bottles and stood under the water until it ran cold. She dressed. She packed. She left the key on the dresser and walked to her car. The parking lot was empty. She got in. She put the key in the ignition. The engine turned but didn't catch. She tried again. Nothing. The battery was dead. She sat in the car and stared through the windshield at the stucco wall of the motel and the dead ficus plants in decorative pots on either side of the entrance, and tried to calculate the cost of a tow truck to Santa Fe, and the probability that her phone had enough signal to call one, and the distance to the nearest rental car place, and whether she should just walk to the highway and flag someone down. Her phone had no signal. She got out of the car. The parking lot was still empty. The motel office was dark, a closed sign taped to the inside of the glass. There was no one to ask. She walked around the side of the building, looking for another car, another person, anything. Behind the motel was a narrow service road and a dumpster, and beyond that, a stretch of scrubland that ended at the base of a red rock mesa. Harper's rental car was parked at the far edge of the service road, facing the highway, doors closed. Reese stopped walking. She stood in the gray morning light and looked at the car, and something in her stomach dropped so fast she felt it in her throat. She walked toward it. The driver's side door was open. The keys were in the ignition. The engine was off. A coffee cup sat in the cup holder, lid still on, the words, "Escape to Santa Fe," printed on the side in faded letters. Harper was lying on the ground beside the car. Her eyes were open. Her skin had the color and texture of wax. A dark stain had spread from beneath her head into the gravel and the dry earth around it. Reese dropped to her knees. She didn't scream. She didn't cry out. She made a sound that came from somewhere below her chest, a low animal noise that she didn't recognize as her own voice. She reached for Harper's hand. It was cold. It was so cold. "Harper, Harper, Harper." She said it like a question. She said it like an apology. She said it like a prayer. Harper did not respond. Reese sat back on her heels. She looked at the ground around Harper's body. The gravel was disturbed in a half circle, signs of a struggle. There were marks on Harper's wrists, faint red lines, the kind that could come from being grabbed and held. Reese looked at her own hands. She stood up. She looked at the mesa in the distance, its red face catching the first real light of morning. She looked at the car with its door open and its engine off and its coffee cup still waiting. She looked at the ground beneath her feet and the parking lot behind her and the highway beyond that, full of trucks and cars carrying people toward places that were not here. She called 911. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like someone else's. The investigation took 3 weeks. Police found Reese's fingerprints on the rental car, on the keys, on the coffee cup. Harper's blood was on Reese's jacket, her shoes, in her trunk. Defensive wounds marked Harper's hands and arms. Bruising on her neck was consistent with manual strangulation. Reese was sitting on the curb when the first cruiser arrived. She didn't resist. She looked at the officer and said, "I didn't do this." She said it at the station, at the arraignment, at the trial, at the sentencing. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Reese Faulkner guilty of second-degree murder. The prosecutor had called it a crime of passion, a betrayal so profound that the defendant had snapped. He showed the jury the text messages. He showed them the photo Harper had sent Dane from a fitting room. He showed them the 8 months of lies, and the night Reese found out, and the morning Harper ended up dead on the gravel behind a motel in New Mexico, alone, her best friend's fingerprints on every surface around her body. The defense argued that there was no physical evidence placing Reese at the scene during the killing. The defense argued that the open car door and disturbed gravel suggested someone else had been there. The defense argued that Reese had every reason to want Harper alive, a living friend who could answer questions, who could explain, who could be confronted again and again until the wound made sense. The jury didn't believe it. Reese Faulkner was sentenced to 15 years. She was 29. Dane Delacroix was never charged. He was not considered a suspect. The police spoke to him once, briefly, and he said he and Harper had been casual. He said he hadn't seen her in weeks. He said he was sorry for her family. He kept his apartment on 5th Street. He kept his job. He kept the life he had built on the ruins of 2 women who trusted him. Reese Faulkner was sentenced to 15 years. She was 29. Dane Delacroix was never charged. The police spoke to him once. He said he and Harper had been casual. He said he was sorry for her family. He kept his apartment on 5th Street and his job and the life he had built on the ruins of 2 women who trusted him. Danny Cruz files his stories in the public record. This one is case number 2024 CR-00847, filed in Santa Fe County. The documents are available to anyone who requests them. The police report, the medical examiner's findings, the jury selection transcript, and the closing arguments. Read them yourself. The truth is in the file.